Hello and welcome to The Wise Way at a slightly later date today, later time even. I'm joined by Rob Leon, who I think is an absolute inspiration. And if you haven't popped into The Wise Way before, hop in now because this is a conversation that you do not want to miss. This is a man who will inspire because he puts people first. So as usual, The Wise Way is not about me. It is about my guest. So Rob, please introduce yourself.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me today. And thank you for the kind words. I'm a professor. I am a consultant, a business owner of a variety of different businesses. And sorry, my alarm clock in the hotel is going off.
I was going to say it's 5:30 in the morning where you are. Please don't worry. Everyone forgets that sometimes I switch things around on the show because my guest isn't always in the same country as me. So thank you for
Oh
turning
my
your
God.
alarm off.
No, well, I made it, right? That's the wonderful thing. And so, yeah, just getting back to me. We have a variety of businesses. I started out really in higher education as just a regular employee that started to become interested in economic development and business development and growth. And through running committees and participating in symposiums, I started to kind of live vicariously through other people and learning, huh, how does this work? This is interesting because in my family, even though my dad was a solopreneur as an accountant, we never really talked about business development or what businesses were. We were a relatively safe and conservative family in terms of that day job is stability. And so it never really occurred to me until I started to watch these other people do things that were, you know, making the world turn and they were enjoying it. And so I started to kind of reverse engineer the process, I guess. And from there, we started to build some small businesses and do some interesting things. And now I feel very fortunate because I live in this space where I get to teach university students and professionals in graduate and undergraduate courses. I get to take the similar type of content from that classroom and repackage it for clients so that they can enhance their businesses or organizations. And what type of organizations? All types of organizations, from small startups, whether it's healthcare, government, you name it, mining, natural resources, up to Fortune 100 companies, and touching businesses and organizations around the world right now. So I feel very fortunate to have that experience and that journey, but I'm also a lifelong, I'd say, in addition to a lifelong learner, a lifelong teacher. So I like to share and support and be there for people. And hopefully, something I have to say can empower them.
And I love that. I love the fact that you talked about reverse engineering. And on a previous episode, I had Luigi Sommeralgi, who was an old boss of mine, and he talked about how much curiosity is one of the most important things. One of the even so easily overlooked. Yeah. Oh, you're too curious, or it's almost seen as a negative. I wondered how much curiosity has fueled your journey.
Um, I would say before I would maybe argue that for me, curiosity, the term is much more recent. Growing up, Curious George was a concept, and that was the extent of that. To me, what's been the journey is open-mindedness and a willingness to surrender, because I could only control what's within this little bubble right here, and and that with that open-mindedness let kind of beautiful things in. And as you know, with that open heart and open mind going into things, things present themselves in a different way. And it's kind of amazing of those opportunities that have followed. And it doesn't mean things aren't going to change and there's not bad days, right? Because I also talk to people about, the roller coaster when you're going you think you're at the top of the world, everything's going great. You're like, pinch me, I feel so good right now. I actually don't even physically hurt, even though I'm getting older. And then all of a sudden, just wait, something's going to happen. And then you go downhill. And life's cyclical like that. In addition to the seasons that we experience in terms of our own life that we have those things. And so if we can't roll with them, we kind of become, they encage us, and it can really derail our efforts. So it's really important to me to maintain that curiosity, to have a high level of tolerance. You'll see in the coming days a blog coming out about tolerance as it relates to curiosity, because it, we don't know everything. Despite how we try to control and manage things, we really don't have much control. It's this illusion of control, and it's not the healthiest thing for people. And so I just kind of surrender and roll with it.
I love that, and I do, and there's lots of reasons why I love that. When I try to control things, and goes back to if you love something, you let it go. It's an old phrase, if you love something, let it go. If it's meant for you, it will come back to you. And I've got a lot of little things that I hold on to dearly, like what's for you won't get by you, because I had to learn to relinquish control. Because I'd always, particularly as an ex-dancer, we were taught control, 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 and learning to let go. So I wondered if you could explain a little bit more about that process, because it's not easy. I know, because I fight it every day, and I have to sit there and say to myself, you're trying to control this. You can't control. Lean in. Let Wu Wei take over. So I wondered if you could,
Good.
yeah,
Got it.
give some advice to some people, because that's quite a challenge, especially for us Brits.
Yeah. So to me, what is the first thing I looked at was, what's the emotional burden I'm carrying? Because when you control, you have certain expectations, and we also know that when we set high expectations, there's a greater chance we'd be disappointed, right? So there's some body of research on low expectations and the reward and benefit and surprise of that, and how impactful moving that is. But what I found was, physically and emotionally and mentally, where's that strain, that stress that accompanies and it often precedes and follows control. And it includes things such as disappointment, um, embarrassment, or a variety of different things. Feeling like you're derailed and not on topic and on track. And and what I learned was that these things, like when I feel that little squiggly feel in my stomach, that's not a healthy moment for me, I don't think. I think that if that's persistent, I'm going to experience some problems. And it was like, I wasn't chronic or anything, but it was just an area of discomfort, disequilibrium. And so what I had to start to recognize is, I know that for me, those feelings were often tied to thoughts, and what thoughts were leading to those physiological feelings. And this is, tied to the work on emotions and naming it so that you can manage it, things like that. And so, and this is before I knew any of that stuff. But what I was able to do is backwards engineer this too, right? If I didn't have a strategy, I wouldn't make it through life, and everything's strategy for me. And so what I started to do is recognize that, look, I can't control why they're going to do what they're going to do, or who they're going to be, or what's coming up next. All I can control is what's in the seat right here. And even then, that's a conscious level of control. There's levels of control, and a lack. There's the lack of control because I'm only a part of the aspect of me. And so, what is it that I truly ultimately have influence over? And that became an important question for me, because even just you think about what's happening in the world and the US news and economy, those are things that are devastating businesses and organizations and really impacting ours significantly. But what can I do about it? Right? To me, it was a lesson, and this isn't the lesson today, but maybe it could be a lesson for someone listening, that I don't have control. I can make some different decisions to minimize its impact on me, but overall, who they are, what they say, I don't have any influence over that. And
Yeah.
so I need to stop letting that eat me up, because I know how that leaves me feeling. And the downriver effect of that is I know how I then show up for people that I care for that don't deserve me to show up that way. Right. So how do I be the best version of myself in terms of my mindset and practice? And so that was how I approached this. So just to quick recap, recognizing what I had and did not have control of, and then beginning that process of stepping back and almost stepping outside of myself to a certain extent to see it is what it is. I can't change it.
That's brilliant. And I wonder, so because we talked about at the very beginning that you put people at the heart, and I wondered if you could expand and link into, because I don't think you can be as enlightened and where you are without being people centric. I can't see how you could separate that. I know that you have to have empathy, but at the same time, you can't let another person run everything, and there has to be an element that you do put people first, but you've also got to keep yourself in check. But I wonder if you could expand more about putting people at the heart of everything that you do.
Yeah. So what I've learned over time is that people are who they are, and even just at this very moment of interaction, a makeup of the past, for better or for worse. And when I talk to my clients and my people I work with, constantly remind that, Christy's trying her best. She's showing up the best she can, trying to be the best version of herself and trying to do the best job possible as well as best as she knows well, right? And for some people, when I think about parents and stuff going on in our family with our kids, and you get criticisms of not being a good parent, like, or how we grow up with some of those things in our mind. They only did what they knew was they thought was best. And so I give people grace automatically when I enter an interaction because the moment, once again, coming back kind of the sub message, subcontext here, is that the moment I integrate control or judgment over someone is the moment that I'm shifting the energy between us. And I'm not showing up as the full version of myself to be open to engage with them, to let things happen. And and what I found, and this has really been the case over probably the last 8 years or so, is really disarming myself as best as I can and just be there and be pleasant and be friendly, smile. I'm not a smiler. But now I have old ladies in the grocery store and coffee shop say, "Why are you smiling so much?" And because what it does to people, right? And and that helps change the energy between us, and it often leads to interesting conversations because I know that if someone's fighting or holding on to something or struggling or wrestling, it's tied to a variety of things that I don't know about. But they don't they don't need me to fix those things, but they need me to be at least sensitive to those things because they themselves don't even necessarily know that they're not showing up
Yeah.
how they maybe prefer to show up, right? Kid forgets his shoe at lunch at home when you drop him off at school, and it throws you out of whack for the day. And then emotion contagion that influences everyone you interact with because you started the day off rough. And I'm trying to figure out how can I break that cycle faster, but that's also being aware of that cycle within myself. So to me, my lessons learned is that I could be a better person to others because I have a little bit of a talent and insight to recognize that they just
Yeah.
need grace and space.
And I can't disagree because it's everything that I practice. It's the path that I walk. My daughter gets completely and utterly out of sorts. So if I've forgotten something, it could be her wellies for forest school. And if I've forgotten, you need wellies in the UK. And if I've forgotten her wellies, I will drive all the way home and then drive all the way back to the school, despite the fact that some people will turn around to me and go, "She'll cope for a day." Well, actually, my one won't. My one will then experience shame because she couldn't wear her wellies and she needed them. My one will then self-hate and loathe and lots of other things that I, as a mom, can stop by saying to my clients, "I'm really sorry. can I push the call by half an hour because I've got to go and do this thing for my child who happens to be 8. Now, I'm not saying my mum didn't do that for me. It's a choice that I made because I want to empower my little 8-year-old to be a bit more like me, but get there quicker, if that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Hmm. Oh yeah, we've earned our lumps, right?
And I've got plenty of them. So I've wondered, because you don't just get to this point in life where you decide that when you feel that judgmental voice coming in, when you hear that inner voice almost despite breaking you, and I had it yesterday. I got triggered over something, and my natural default, and I knew my emotional head versus my logical head, and I knew I had to get to my logical head to sort out the emotional head, and I did get there, not too long, a bit quicker than usual. But I wondered, along the way, there must have been somebody who has helped you find this path, because it doesn't just throw itself at you.
It's an interesting um, concept because there's not any one person that explicitly stands out. There's an accumulation of effects and events and experiences. And so my reaction to your comment earlier, I consider myself a Taoist. So your comment earlier really hit me right in the heart. So that was stuff I developed and studied in college that calmed my mind and put me into perspective as it relates to balance.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of the journey for me. But what I learned over different points of my life from some people that know they're special and some people that don't know they're special, just kind of um, coincidental interaction type of thing, is that I've taken messages away that there's only so much I can control. Everything's learned. The surgeon is not someone that's special and different than most of the population. They just maybe went to school longer, maybe started up off a little higher in terms of socioeconomic starting points in life to move to those places. But we possess all the skills and abilities to do pretty much anything. And and once I really started to recognize that the guy that's fixing my car that's going to cost me $2,000 this week, he went to school, actually could have went to my university, learned how to do that in a year or two, developed the skills, and is doing that now. And so everything's learned. And so what I what I then realized is that I can I can manage most things, and I don't mean like control them, but I can learn most things. And if I find discomfort um, or dis-ease, I can learn how to work through that and learn how to recognize what it is, because I wouldn't be the first person to do this. And so that's really been the journey for me. There's been a lot of self work based on these little things that would drop into my life at different points. And it's just the accumulation of those things.
So when because you were talking about being a professor in the universities, so I wondered if you could, I love what you just said, by the way, because it totally resonated with me, and I get it, I really do. So, but I wondered if you could talk about the similarities actually between because you talked about backward engineering, you talked about taking what you have in the classroom into business owners and vice versa. So I wondered if you could
Sure.
explore and explain a little bit about how that works. I mean, I
Yeah,
know as a business owner how it works, but for the audience, it would really help them.
sure. Well, yeah, and there's a good background for this question, right? Because one of the thoughts is, well, professors, they talk about theory and they actually don't know what occurs in the workplace, right? And and yes, I agree, by the way, in many instances, but not all instances. I, we use theory, frameworks, and models to inform the lens of the decision-making capabilities of our students, and that's what I do. We spend a lot of time in the gray space, whereas in academia, things are often presented as matter of fact, um, which is ironic because we really push back on language like proven, even though people use the term proven. What can you prove? There's not a lot that's actually been proven, right? We demonstrate relationships, but and so we'll use these models, frameworks, and theories to guide what it is we're doing. My students are all working professionals, so so they are. I'm finally at a point where I'm starting to be older than most of them. For the longest time, I was younger than most of them, and and I don't have tests in my classes. I have projects based on work needs in their life, whether it's their own organization, the organization they're consulting with, an organization they identify a need with. And so what we do is we take those frameworks, tools, and theories, and we walk them through and integrate those to what it is they're trying to accomplish with these clients. And by doing that, and it's not case studies. Case studies are too, in many instances, too linear and ambiguous. That there's not enough information there to do certain things with it. So it's more important for us to have these live studies, live cases, and and so we go through it. We recognize that academic pace is a different pace than life pace. Sometimes it's slower, sometimes it's faster, and and we adjust. But even realizing that in and of itself, and those obstacles of, look, I have this client all set up and we're going to have these interviews and questionnaires, then all of a sudden they get cut off by the client because they're going in a direction the client's not comfortable with. That's part of life. Like that is, it's adversity in one form, and that's what you're going to encounter, whether you're a leader, a manager, a consultant, a parent, right? A friend. Things are going to change midstream. And so those that want to control and manage, here we go again, coming back to that, struggle with that. But it's a great activity to learn how to surrender and let those things pass. And we make do with it. We pivot. We look at new opportunities. So that's the academic framework to that. So what I do is with my clients and with people in the business environments and organizational environments is that I take my information, I take my content that I teach on, and I actually build my own models and frameworks for industries so that they're easier to digest, easier to apply. Because what I've learned, at least for me, and it served me well, is that if I can rely on something that's a solid model or framework, it removes the burden that I would have to kind of learn or build. Right? You think about AI, it's shortcutting some of our processes that I don't have to cobble together as many concepts. It will pull them together for me, do the research, so I can make some decisions. And the same thing's true with what we build for organizations. They're research based. The interesting thing is, let's think about this. They rarely appear in my classes. They're the outcomes of the studies and the research and the papers that we use in our classes. But I don't feel like I want them to learn as close to the point of origin of the research and the information as possible to make their own decisions. What I've done for my clients is I've moved away from that and I distilled it down to actionable pieces that make sense. I don't want to shortcut my students in that. I might do a class one day that features all my models and then we can get into the research that informs all of them. But for my clients, it's a different product. And so therefore, um, we do well with organizations. They enjoy the slight academic feel and bend of the information that they're learning, but
Yeah.
it's only brief. It's just to get their feet wet so they could appreciate it and recognize that also you need to compare what you're shopping for out there because there's a lot of things that aren't supported. They're just things that have been put together based off of kind of gut or past experiences, which are often not well informed, and people tend to overlook the context of why things are the way they are. And so you think about most major management and leadership books, many of them are very presented in a very linear way, very basic. Just do this and you'll have success. And there's no accuracy to that because the success you experience in your life, Christy, or sorry, Kirsty, um, is is specific to the path and the shoes you're wearing on that path.
And on
And
that
and
day.
on that day, exactly. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it really stretches me because I have to show up a different way in the classroom than I do with my clients. But at the end of the day, to see the impact it has on both of them, and because we're in exam week right now, they are providing feedback in terms of their experiences in the courses, and just to see them say, I thought I had this figured out day one, and I can't tell you how far off from that I am today, and that much better off because it was such a journey to get me to where I am.
It's brilliant. I love, and the reason I like it is one of my projects I work on is in the world of academia. So as you were talking about that, I'm sitting there going, "Yep, yeah," and I bring the business acumen for the communication strategies into a huge academic EU-funded project, and it's really an interesting conversation. I have learned so much, but they've also learned so much. It's just been a real magical journey. It really has. I'm going to be sad when it finishes in October, actually. It's a bit like, oh. But this is where the tables get to be turned. And I do apologise. I've got lovely hay fever this morning, lovely tree pollen. The tables get turned and you get to ask me a question. And I don't know what it's going to be. And I don't want to know what it's going to be. In fact, I don't really want to know what it's going to be ever.
So at this point in your career, what's something that you're looking at that you think you should be doing that you're not doing yet?
So really good question, because my career is really wiggly and I have wiggled everywhere. When I go out, people say to me, "What have you done in your life?" And it's like, well, it's more a case of what I haven't done than what I have done. And this is going to sound absolutely outrageous when I say this, but I think the only thing I haven't done yet is retire. Um, Because I have done everything from cleaning toilets to
Yeah.
standing up doing food samples and drink samples to twirling in the on stage to delivering lines on TV, all the way through to presenting. Obviously, still doing that, and then running my own business multiple times, because I didn't just do this one. Of course, I didn't. I ran myself as an actor. Then I went into the world of business. I put myself through a degree at 37. I would have said until my daughter came along, I've not been a mum yet, but I've even done that one. And I love that. I genuinely, being a mum to me is the biggest gift that I was ever given. And I am honoured to be my daughter's mom and to watch her grow. I guess that's what's the next thing for me, is learning to let go. Because when we were having this conversation on the school run this morning, in 10 years' time, my daughter's going to be either going to university or doing a whatever she wants to do. And I'm going to have to learn to let go. Now, letting go of me is fine. I've learned that. Letting go of my 8-year-old, so I guess the next step for me will be, and it's not business, it will be letting go. And then after business, it will be learning how to do nothing in retirement, which I am going to be terrible at. So in fact, I'll probably end up doing something, because I'll be down the WI or something, because I'm not so sure I can sit still. So yeah, maybe I should just task myself with learning to sit still and doing nothing. So interesting question, not one I was expecting, and not one I think I can answer yet.
Yeah, it's a journey, right? And with I have teens and my wife's kids are grown. Your daughter, she becomes a teen if they're like most of them will make it a little bit easier for them to leave me.
Well, she
Because
told
they
me,
become so certain of things. So it's fun. I love my boys. They're
ah,
amazing. But
well,
it's just a process that you never experience. If you've never, to your point, you never had that experience, how would you know to have that experience? And every day, at least I come from a lens of, once again, I can't control, and I also understand the science of human behavior. I have
yeah,
some real lessons that I need to follow myself to see how it's going to influence their outcome. I have to trust the science. And actually, I've been doing that for the last 6 years really with them, and it's coming true. We're seeing their development in a way that I think if I would have tried to control more, manage more, they would have moved through a different path in life.
Yeah, I think the science of human behavior is fascinating. I know that when she gets upset, I don't just immediately go to, oh, she's acting out, for instance. She's 8, she's going to act out. And when
Right.
she's acting out, of course, the immediate thing is, but most of the time, not yesterday, but most of the time, I'm able to go, what is driving the behavior? And do her head in, because she'll be throwing her toys or whatever she's doing in a really bad mood. And I'm going, what's going on at school then?
Yep.
What's happening? Because this isn't who you are. So what's going on underneath? What are you worried about? Now I know what's worrying her, first residential, but she can't verbalize that yet. So she's starting to get really stressed about first residential, but she can't verbalize it. I'm not perfect. So last night I definitely made a mistake. I was a definitely mummy fail, but I do try, and I would, like you. Have you got any, before, as we're wrapping up, do you have any books that you could recommend on the science of human behavior? Because not just for me, but for the readers, because I do I think it's a subject that is very little talked about.
Yeah. So the book I would recommend, and it's an older book. It's Why We Do What We Do by DC and Flaste. It's about the science of motivation. It's one of the areas I study in DC, and one of his other co-authors, Ryan, are the pioneers, the forefathers of this motivation movement. And we're getting it wrong consistently. So people need to read that book,
Brilliant.
and they'll make a difference. Lots of surrender in it, which might be uncomfortable for people.
It's hard. It's really hard. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It's been an absolute, as I expected, an insightful conversation where I had no idea where it was going to go.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.